2005 was a big year for Star Wars, seeing the release of what was at the time the final installment in the film series. It was a massive year for Star Wars gaming as well. Knights of the Old Republic 2 had just released in December 2004. The first of the now iconic Traveler's Tale LEGO games would be based off the prequel trilogy, and by the end of the year, Battlefront 2, widely regarded as one of the greatest Star Wars games ever made, would hit the shelves. But another game came out during that time. And while I don't think you could even remotely say that it's underrated or forgotten, I do think it's a fair assessment to say that it didn't have the same staying power as other pieces of Star Wars media from the time. Republic Commando was different. While it still looked like Star Wars, it was grittier, more muted, more grimy. The trailer showed a group of bulkier clones deep behind enemy lines, using a much more physical and brutal fighting style that one might associate with black operations, and the type of special forces fighting that was seen more and more in the public eye during the late 90s and early 2000s with the War on Terror. Needless to say, it was lacking a lot of the general child-friendly image Star Wars as a brand largely had, and while that might have pushed some people away, it certainly brought more in, especially with the rise of first-person shooters at the time like Halo or Call of Duty. In fact, when describing this game, I regularly call it Star Wars' take on Halo. Republic Commando is another game I remember having as far back as I can think. No idea how I got it or even why I was allowed to play it as young as I was. I was 6, maybe 7 at the time. I always saw it as being more mature, and I still do, even if it is tame compared to what was and is currently on the market. Of course, the older I got, the more I appreciated the game in its darker tone. And older still as I grew to appreciate the themes. I'm sure many of you have watched my Rise of the Empire video, and this is largely going to be the same. When I started working on this video, I wasn't sure if I would have as much unique to say about this game as I did for Battlefront 2. It's not that I wouldn't have unique things to say about Republic Commando, it's just that I feel like with the Battlefront 2 video, I really said something new, something no one else had ever put into words before. And I wasn't sure if I could do that with this game to the same degree. But the more I played it while working on this video, I feel like I finally cracked this game's code. This is still a game worthy of discussion, and one I hope to analyze and gain a deeper understanding for. But before we start with the game, I want to show something off to you. This right here is the Republic Commando Prima Guide. I'm sure a lot of you remember seeing these strategy manuals in stores and places whenever we were growing up. I actually got this one whenever I had to replace my original copy of the game. It comes with all the standard offerings, maps, levels, tips, tricks, things like that, and then there's some frankly awesome looking concept art in the back of this book, which I'm sure you'll see throughout this video. But there's two aspects of this I want to talk about that I think will help paint a better picture and give us a better understanding about these commandos before we hit the game proper. The guide explains how the commando program came about. Most of this will just be summary with a few direct quotes, but from it we learned that it was Jango Fett himself who pushed for the creation of a specialized fighting unit. He saw the basic clones as too soft. They won't be effective as anything but cannon fodder. You can't train a soldier with a computer. So, Jango contacted several ex-Mandalorian soldiers he knew to come in and train specialized pods of clones. These Ronin came to Kamino, fully cognizant of the fact that they might never be permitted to leave. These mercenaries then trained squads of commandos as if they were their own children, since Mandalorian culture places such a heavy emphasis on family. Due to this more specialized and rigorous training, these commandos had more individuality, more pride, more honor, more bravery. However, the idea behind these clone pods largely comes from Kamino's own mythology. The Iowa are these aquatic creatures you can briefly see being used by the Kaminoans in the movie. The Prima Guide comes with a short story called The Tale of the Iowa Pod, a legend on Kamino which further inspired the Commando's creation. Give it a listen. Before the dawn of the second sun, there dwelt beneath the oceans a magical god beast. He was called Protoss, for he was the first and only of his kind, a god and a beast, and the ruler of all the animals beneath the surface. Protoss was strong, stronger than any living beast, and mystical. He had powers beyond comprehension. But as it was in the waters, there were many who sought to take his place, to claim the title and honors of being the most powerful beast on the open seas. First came Melkor, son of the deep waters, a dark titan with sharp hunter's teeth and fins like volcanic mountains. He challenged Protoss openly. "Protoss, meet me in battle, and we shall decide who is the ruler of this blue kingdom." Protoss met Melkor upon the ridge of Thelina, and there they fought. For 6 days and 6 nights they roiled the seas, brawled and grappled, wrestled and dueled. Melkor, with his power and size, sought to overwhelm Protoss. But Protoss was quick and agile, and he turned Melkor's powerful back upon the sea creature. On the 7th day, Melkor tired, and in his exhaustion, faltered. Protoss felled him. The seas churned with his blood, and the fish were fed for an eon upon his carcass. Protoss continued to rule the oceans. He was next challenged by a sentient group of kickless swimmers. The Kicklaw were tiny, but they were legion, and they challenged him. "Protoss, meet us in battle. Though our numbers are sheer, we will overcome you." Protoss met the vast swarm of Kikla in the deepest waters of the ancient trench, and there they fought. For a month they swarmed and struggled, swam and battled. The Kikla with their vast numbers sought to outlast Protoss, but Protoss was strong and single-minded, and he scattered the school and slowly ate them, thus maintaining his strength through the long battle. The Kikla were quarrelsome and inconsistent, and when they struck, their tiny teeth gave little wound. Finally, at the new moon, Protoss gobbled up the last of the tiny Kikla, and they were no more. Now, by this time, Protoss had grown old and arrogant in his power. He knew that none could oppose him, and he wielded his authority freely. One day, he met an Iwapod, who were swimming to the South Sea for the winter. Protoss blocked their way. "You cannot pass. Go back to the North Seas and freeze." The Iwa were puzzled. "Why, Master Protoss?" they asked. The old god laughed. "Because it pleases me." The Iwa knew they could not return, that they would surely die within the North Seas. "We must fight," they told themselves. And so they did. But being Iwa, and not desirous of glory or fame, they did not announce their challenge to Protoss in the manner of the old ways. Instead, they simply and swiftly attacked. First, like the Kikla, they swarmed him, and Protoss scattered them. And then, like Melkor, they used their jaws to rip at his flesh. But Protoss's hide was tough, and they could not strike a killing blow. But then the Iwa returned, swarming like the Kikla and attacking like Melkor. They were fierce, but not large. They were numerous, but single-minded. Thus the Iwa, after a time, began to bleed Protoss, but they could not bring him down. One of the Iwa saw that the god-beast had exposed his soft throat, and sacrificing himself, charged and clamped down hard with his jaws. Protoss bellowed in agony, feeling the life force ebb away from him, and smashed at the lone Iwa's body with his fins. But even in death, the brave Iwa hung on, never letting go, to allow his friends to strike at Protoss a final time. And thus did a small pod of Iwa end an elder god's life. And that is why, to this day, the Iwa rule the oceans, and are accorded a measure of respect even amongst the largest, most powerful, and most plentiful beast. For the Iwa, desiring no glory, defeated the monster god Protoss, and brought peace to the oceans of Commando. The role of the Commandos is now apparent. They are not a single mighty warrior as a Jedi might be, nor are they a legion who seeks to overwhelm through pure numbers, like the clone or droid armies are. They are a small pod, a family of one mind and one goal. There is no infighting, no arrogance, only a goal which cannot be completed alone. They are swift and subtle, and with that subtlety they can fell powerful entities. But I think the most important aspect of this story is that lone Iowa who saw an opportunity and took it. At the cost of his own life, his brothers killed Protoss. Even death could not stop the dedication of a single Iowa. Which then begs the question, what are these clone pods, these commandos, truly capable of?
Delta down! Enemy terminated. Proceed to next sector.
Welcome, little one. This is your first day.
The game actually opens in one of the coolest ways it could have. You begin life just as your character does. Still floating in a capsule filled with amniotic fluid, Tanwi educates you on your life's mission. You are RC-1138. And yes, I'd be remiss not to point out the George Lucas Easter egg. You are then given numerous scenes depicting 3-8's young life, from learning alongside other clones, to target practice, to even live fire exercises. This is also where you are told you are different, not like the regular trooper. You are a commando, part of a squad and equipped with better weapons and armor. The Iowa Pod connection is mentioned as well as the fact that your team must be ready to give their lives in service of something greater. We also finally meet these squad mates, 4-0, 6-2, and 07. We'll talk more about them later because for now, we're finally deployed for the first time to Geonosis.
Sir, we're gonna split up for the drop, but we'll meet you at the RV on Geonosis. See you planetside, sir.
The gunship drop onto the planet is another moment that just feels awesome to watch. Sitting there as the doors close and you drop into atmosphere to join the battle. It might also be at this point when you realize the only other clone with you is not your squad mate. Your advisor then contacts you and gives you the details of your mission. It's an assassination. You need to kill Sun Fact, a high-ranking Geonosian. But first, you need to link up with the rest of your squad. If you look outside, you'll realize why you weren't all dropped in together. Better to lose just one commando rather than a whole squad. Before rappelling down to the surface, the other clone with you gets grabbed and dragged off by a local Geonosian. This is where you first see the fragility of other clones, something which gets shown off quite a bit in this game, particularly this opening level. For now, there's not much to touch on gameplay-wise. This first section is a tutorial teaching you how to survive and use your arsenal. It's the gritty atmosphere which sets the tone for the rest of the game that is worth discussing. While moving through the bombed-out infrastructure, you come across various engagements between clones and battle droids, many of which turn in the clones' favor just by you being there. There are several scripted events that see clones die as you continue to fight on. Some troopers even comment on your presence.
Hey, 3-5, check it out. Commandos. If anything as good as I hear, they can practically win the war themselves.
All of this serves to further build up this idea in your head that you are leagues above what other clones are capable of. You feel like a one-man army. You might even stop to think about how powerful you'll be once your squad is back together. But taking a step back, you start to see the very real dangers around you. Men are dying, some in more horrible ways. You can't help but wonder what happened to that other clone who came with you. Battle droids also see a major redesign, lacking the sleek, tan, and somewhat goofy aesthetic we normally associate with them. Now they're more metallic, a gunmetal gray with a few blue markings and beady eyes. From their design alone, they feel more dangerous, and you appreciate what made the Separatists such a threat in the first place. The Geonosians are even more off-putting, with a far more alien and animalistic design. The enemies feel deadly. Even if in gameplay they're easy to deal with, you find yourself hoping not to run into them in large numbers. Also, while we're on the subject, everything bleeds. Your melee button extends a wrist knife, which kills enemies in a single strike. Oftentimes, this will result in a splatter of guts and viscera on your visor. None of it is red, but you know exactly what that goop is supposed to be. Even droids are not immune, with them squirting a blue, oily substance. Everything I've just mentioned reiterates the fact that this is a far more violent Star Wars than we're used to seeing. It emphasizes the more personal and brutal aspects of battle, the dangers that are often forgotten about. I won't be going into this much detail for every other level going forward, but I wanted to stop and explain what is set up, and what we will continue to see over the course of the game. All of this, and I haven't even mentioned our first squad mate, who we pick up at the end of this section.
Woohoo! Eat plasma, you stupid droid! Directly behind the turret emplacement. Have some of that!
Delta 6-2, or Scorch, is your team's demolition expert. We will learn over the course of the game that every member of your squad has a specific role, but we'll talk more about them and their implementation later. For now, you can order Scorch to blow up debris blocking your path. True to the marketing, the squad is your weapon in this game. You can command and control them in various ways, but the system is simple and intuitive enough to not overcomplicate things. Just like this debris. You may ask them to plant a bomb and clear the way, and one of your teammates will do just that. Or, you could do it yourself and let your squad defend you. We'll talk more about these squad aspects at certain key moments, but for now, just know that they're there, and fairly easy to use. After 6-2 sets a charge, you can blow it and continue on to the structure where Sun Fact is located. Also, while looking around, I realized that this area is modeled after the Geonosis arena from the film. However, it doesn't make much sense if that's where we're actually located. Still, every environment in this game looks very good in my opinion. There's a very consistent art style that reflects the previously mentioned grit, while still feeling distinctly like Star Wars. As we enter the structure, we also find our next squad member, 4-0, also known as Fixer. The rest of this section is largely just more areas to learn more new abilities like night vision, and get used to commanding multiple squad members. As you load into the final portion of the level, you meet your last squad mate, 07, who makes a very memorable entrance. Now that we have our full squad, let's briefly talk about them. Despite being clones, each member of your team has a very distinct personality. These traits are manifested mainly through their dialogue and a few text blurbs during the loading screens. Scorch is the first we'll talk about, and he is easily the most animated one here. From the first moment you hear him, you know he's going to be a more light-hearted clone, consistently making light of the situation and cracking jokes. I don't recall him ever being obnoxious, but you definitely hear him talking more than his brothers.
Red, red, green, or red, green, red.
He is the demolition expert. In fact, his name comes from an incident where, while training, he set off an explosion that scorched off the eyebrows of his Mandalorian trainer, as well as his own. Again, I think he stands out the most, because while every other clone has their own distinct personality, his is the only one that feels more jovial and less serious. Next is Fixer. He is the technician of your squad and the most straight-laced. He is as by the book as they come, to the point where I'm pretty sure he is the only clone to ever refer to the team by their numbers instead of their name. Despite this fact, he isn't stuck up about it. He never tries to correct his brothers or force them to adhere to the rules as strictly as he does. He never gets annoyed by Scorch's antics. At least, not any more annoyed than the rest of the squad. He's also not portrayed as a nerd, despite being a hacker and a slicer. He's honestly just a fairly plain and ideal soldier. And while he definitely has the least characterization in the game, he's not boring and offers a nice contrast to his more eccentric teammates, a sort of everyman for your squad. Lastly is Sev, the sniper and psychopath of the group. While more professional than Scorch, he has his own twisted sense of humor. with his stories or statements often eliciting some level of discomfort from his squad mates. He also has a unique relationship with Scorch, with the two being far more brotherly and teasing with their dialogue. While he is certainly the edgy one of the group, it never felt overbearingly so, at least in my opinion. There's also a certain irony about how battle-hardened and jaded he comes across, despite this quite literally being his first ever mission, the same as the rest of the squad. The other commandos wonder if Sev's pod was defective, which led to his more dramatic personality. But perhaps this personality speaks more to the intensity of their training under Wall and Val. Val was the Mandalorian assigned to train Delta Squad, and while he is far more prevalent in other medias like novels, he really has no tangible presence in this game beyond a few loading screen notes. But with our team assembled and our target just a few feet away, it's time to complete our mission. While writing this, I was struck by how strange it is that the very first thing we do is a high-value assassination. In context, the war has only just started, perhaps not even in any official capacity. Yet, whatever intelligence service is leading us already knows who to hit barely an hour into the first battle. It either speaks to the sheer effectiveness of the Republic spy network, or was a slight writing oversight. But, as clones do, we don't question orders, we follow them. And that has just become more difficult as Sun Fact managed to escape from the room as we entered. And no matter how hard you try, he cannot be killed before leaving. Thankfully, he hasn't gone very far. Just 2 rooms over is the landing pad. After fighting through more droids, you and your squad breach the final door and prepare to finish the job. Sev shows off his role as the team sniper as he sets up to shoot Sun Fact's fighter out of the sky. I really like how, despite being the player character, you aren't the one to finish this mission. All you need to do is order Sev to position, defend him from oncoming Geonosians, and wait for a well-placed shot that brings the ship down. If you keep looking out over the overhang, you will catch a very interesting sight.
Did you see that? That craft didn't look Geonosian. Confirmed. It's unidentified. I'll check the intelligence databanks. Move on, Deltas.
What you just saw was General Grievous's ship, though it was never identified as such. So little significance is given to this moment that I honestly didn't even know it was in the game until a few months ago. And this is my first time seeing it with my own eyes. For the meantime, this goes nowhere. And besides, we've been given our next mission. I hope in the future I won't spend this much time talking about a single level again, but it is important to lay the groundwork before moving forward. This single level does so much to set up the themes and atmosphere of this game. It's also our first real look at our squad, which there is much more to say about, but we will cover them later on. And I haven't even touched on the protagonist himself yet, but there's no time for that. Our advisor tells us that another Commando squad has failed their mission of destroying a droid factory. 3-6 is the trooper mentioned, which is a reference to the character Darman, one of the protagonists of the Republic Commando novels. This failure to complete his mission is even written as the prologue to the Hard Contact novel, which also comes in the Prima Guide. This reminds us that, while we've just succeeded, the battle is far from over, so we set off to pick up the pieces of a mission our brothers have already failed, reminding us that we are still very mortal. Our new mission is to destroy a droid factory under the planet's surface. However, before we can do that, there is a jamming device preventing us from finding the factory's exact location. As we reach the bottom of the elevator, we get our first new weapon, a sniper rifle. However, this weapon is lying at the feet of a dead clone trooper. It really makes no sense for a regular clone to be down here, especially when it's a commando's weapon at his feet. Even to this day, the DC-17 weapon is traditionally only wielded by commando units. I wonder if the implication was that he was a part of 3-8's commando squad who died down here. Now, of course, he doesn't have the commando armor, but considering how similar the concept art looked to regular clones at first, it could be a holdover from that. Or maybe he wasn't ever intended to come from the failed squad. Either way, I do think this scene would be a bit more impactful if it were a dead commando lying here. But for now, let's talk about the weapon. This isn't actually a sniper rifle, but rather a sniper attachment for your rifle. The DC-17 frame that you use can be modified and converted into different weapons. You will get 2 attachments in this game, and this is the first. The sniper rifle is absurdly powerful, being effective both at long range as well as short should you need to fall back on it or desire to use something with a bit more punch than your base weapon. The game immediately presents you with the perfect spot to test it out. After destroying the bridge, you can then see if you can take out any surviving Geonosians before they get close. It should now be apparent just how powerful this rifle is. Before reaching the jamming device, we pass through a rather unsettling room.
Strange egg-like things. Looks like we're in some sort of Geonosian birthing chamber, gentlemen. What do you know? They are eggs.
While the prospect of killing Geonosian babies is gruesome, the game actually classifies them as worker drones. Much like an ant colony, these drones are used as labor within Geonosian society. Now, while they do possess the ability to recognize you as a threat and attack, they are also clearly only now being hatched. Still, with an egg chamber being so close to both the jamming device and the factory, you have to wonder just how heavily ingrained the ideas of war and industry are in the Geonosian hive mind. After leaving this chamber, you'll reach the jammer. This is one of the best designed portions of the game in my opinion, because it serves as a sort of litmus test of the game's basic mechanics. Firstly, you have the jammer, which needs to be destroyed, but it's protected by a force field, which you need to deactivate before planting your charges. The control to said shields is located a bit deeper into the cave, an area full of pillars and crevices that Geonosians will spawn from. Several rock formations will provide excellent cover, and a place for your squad to set up both sniping and grenade positions. All that you need to complete this task is present. You just need to decide how you're going to use the tools at your disposal. You could either set up your squad in a way that gives you cover fire while you go in and deactivate the force field yourself, or you could send a squad mate up to do it while you protect them. With the shield down, the last step is planting a charge on the jammer. One cool detail I noticed here is how the jammer interferes with your visor. When you get close enough, all the electronics in your helmet act up, leading to a static-filled screen and flickering indicators. It's not enough to disrupt you, however, as you set off the charge and re-establish comms with your CO. By now, you might have even forgotten that the jamming device was not even your main objective, but rather a factory located farther below the surface. With one final descent down the caverns, you and your brothers continue this mission too tough for other squads. In my mind, the jamming room is the last real tutorial segment of the game. After giving you time to familiarize yourself with your squad and how to use it, the game gives you a room perfect to test your skills one final time before leaving you to your own devices. But even after rappelling to the factory level, the game has one last crucial lesson for you to learn. As you exit the ventilation shaft, you are greeted with the first new enemy of the game, the Geonosian Elite. Whereas other Geonosians will rush you down and attack with melee weapons, the Elite opts for a more tactical solution. He is equipped with a beam cannon, which fires a continuous stream of plasma, forming a precise laser which is very hard to escape from. Another game mechanic I want to briefly bring up is how certain enemies in this game are weaker to specific weapons, and strong enemies may have a weak point. An example of this is the super battle droids, which have a large red dot located under their faceplate, where they can take more damage. I bring that up because here, the Geonosian Elite is most susceptible to sniper shots. I'll mention more of these weaknesses as we come across them in the game, but for now, just know that the optimal way to kill this foe is to equip your sniper rifle and squeeze off 2 or 3 shots, which is enough to bring it down. Now, this sounds easy, but it means that the Elite has a higher resistance to standard blaster fire, making your base weapon all but useless. Now, while it may not be bad for you, this poses a major problem for your squad mates, who, unless ordered to specific positions, won't switch to their sniper rifles. In addition to this, the Elite is difficult to hit, constantly darting around with quick motions. In fact, the only time it stays still enough to get off a clean shot is while it's firing its laser, and even then it moves slightly when charging the beam. What this will most likely result in is your first bloodbath. Now, as a kid, I struggled with this particular room, but even while replaying it for this video, This elite either killed my squad or brought them all to the brink of death. And even once you shoot down the first one, 2 more will spawn before you leave the room. And this is all without mentioning the other obstacles. The room is a large, cavernous chamber with only a small natural bridge that you can walk across. However, both the middle and end of this bridge have been barricaded and need to be blown through. There's also another new piece of artillery located on a small outcropping, a Geonosian sonic turret. And then on top of all the hazards and powerful weaponry, you still have to deal with the elites who are aided by more foot soldiers, which feel like they infinitely spawn until you cross the gap. It's the first real instance of the game shoving waves of enemies at you, and your only real option is to brute force your way through. I'll stop for a minute to talk about the revival and health mechanics in this game, since this is probably where you'll first truly need them. All of your squad mates have limited health and become incapacitated once it runs out. You can see each unit's health with these color-coded symbols next to your own life bar. You are able to revive your teammates with this sort of back-to-defibrillator, which brings them back to around half their health. Whenever you go down, you have the option to either reload a save, wait for an ally to come revive you, or order your squad mates to prioritize your revival. Most maps will have back-to-station set up where either you can heal yourself or order a squad mate to do so. You can't assign specific members of your squad to heal, but the game is actually pretty good about sending over whichever squad mate needs it the most. Occasionally, the squad members will heal themselves without prompting, so long as there's no battle and there's a station nearby. Now, this is just from my observations and may not be true, but it seems like every squad member's programming is different as to how likely they are to heal themselves, with Sev being the most hesitant and even refusing my orders to heal every once in a while if he's mostly healthy. Now, while your squad mates are capable of taking a great deal of punishment, it's still likely that you will stay standing longer than any other Delta, which means that in situations like this room, you might find yourself juggling revives, back to orders, all while holding off the enemy. Once you finally cross the bridge, the fighting lets up and you have a chance to breathe while battling the last of the Geonosians, even turning one of their turrets back on them. Destroy this pillar to create a walkway, and now you have access to the droid factory. Destroying the factory is a fairly straightforward objective. All you need to do is slice a computer terminal to discover its weaknesses, and then sabotage 2 power conduits. It's a fairly simple and straightforward mission, and there's really not much to talk about, so let me take another moment to analyze our arsenal. Most shooter games seem to have a hard rule about how much equipment you can carry. Most of them limit you to a mere 2 weapons, which can be swapped out with anything you might come across. This creates a tension and strategy when picking your weapons. You could pick up something powerful or something with a specific utility like a flamethrower, a rocket launcher, or a sniper rifle. But that forces you to fill your other slot with a practical weapon, like a basic rifle or a machine gun. A mechanic like this may lead to you passing up on a weapon that you really want to try, but due to your limited utility, you skip over it. Or if you do decide to pick it up, it might mean sacrificing a weapon that is ideal for a specific situation you may come across. It's a good system that makes you think about what you're carrying. Republic Commando, however, opts for something entirely different. Like I mentioned before, the DC-17, or the blaster every commando uses, was designed to be customizable, with different parts being swapped out to create an entirely new weapon. How this manifests in gameplay is that you can turn your standard blaster rifle into the either previously acquired sniper rifle or a grenade launcher, which we'll be collecting soon. And you can switch to these variations at any time, so long as you have the ammo to do so. You also come equipped with a pistol, which has infinite ammo, a great weapon to fall back on. So what this means that at any given time, you have an immediate access to 4 different weapon types, all of which can be equipped via the D-pad. This removes the worry of a limited arsenal, as you always have access to a long-range option and a heavy explosive option. While this does remove a certain level of gun strategy, ammunition for these expansions can be few and far between at times. However, we're not done, as you're still able to carry a 5th weapon, which could be any blaster picked up by a defeated enemy. Now on Geonosis, the only one of these enemy weapons you'll have access to is the Elite's beam cannon. Now this particular gun has a very peculiar animation attached to it. The Prima Guide states that the plasma used in these lasers is actually taken from the blood plasma of the user, and these finger-like syringes are what harvest it. But of course here, they harmlessly clack off your armor, meaning no unwanted blood donations, but also a limited ammo pool. In later missions you will come across various other weapons, and you will never hesitate to try them out, knowing that you have a solid loadout that you can always fall back on. Now, returning to the mission at hand, you only need to worry about an army of battle droids and Geonosians as you destroy the power conduits. After detonating the last one, you need to escape. There's only one problem. You are still deep underground inside a facility which is quickly becoming unstable. Almost surprisingly, however, your commanding officer has your back. A gunship descends to your location through a ventilation cave to save you. Now, I only say this is surprising because I feel like in most media of this nature, your commanders would simply leave you to fend for yourself. I think of games like ODST or the myriad of spy movies where some top agent is disavowed. In my opinion, this feels far more realistic because few would leave such high-value soldiers to die. And after all, they still have need of us. There is no rest for Delta Squad, only another mission to complete. There is one final mission objective for Delta Squad to deal the ultimate blow to Separatist forces before the battle concludes. You might recall the core ships seen retreating from Geonosis in the Attack of the Clones movie. These are the central command point for these Lucrehulk vessels. It seems in the escape, one of these core ships has become disabled. Now Delta Squad must infiltrate it in an attempt to acquire the launch codes for the other core ships left on the planet, preventing them from leaving with their droid armies. But, as seems to be usual, there is a secondary objective we must complete first. The gunship we escaped in cannot get any closer to our target due to an anti-air cannon. We must destroy this cannon both to help the rest of the clone army in their battle, and to ensure that we can exfiltrate just as quickly as our last mission. This level highlights one of Republic Commando's best aspects. You've likely noticed that, so far, there is no real story in this game, beyond completing missions to help the Republic war effort. And, with a few exceptions here and there, that is going to be the case across the rest of the game's campaigns. Despite this, Republic Commando excels in environmental storytelling. The stakes of each mission are often felt rather than communicated, with a tactile example of how completing our missions will help, and how devastating failure can be. Take, for instance, the various canyons you must traverse to reach the anti-air cannon. You see why you could not land any closer, as it doesn't take long to find the debris of other crashed gunships, and what's left of their crew being picked off by the enemy. Often, it seems, by their own ignorance. But where other clones see a helpless situation, the Commandos see opportunity. One of the gunship's laser turrets still works, so you could order a squad mate to operate it, or you could make the much more fun choice, using it yourself to get some cathartic revenge against the Geonosian elites. This space that we are in is also pure Geonosian wilderness, with the nearest structure being the Separatist base we are making our way towards. This means that this is all home turf for the locals, and they certainly have the advantage. Geonosians are the only real threat we come across in these gorges. The high walls and sheer cliffs give them the edge as you're boxed into narrow hallways. All the while, they fly overhead or emerge from caverns, using the rock walls as footholds before descending upon you. The environment itself feels hostile as you fight an uphill battle against creatures with a distinct evolutionary advantage over you. It's also not hard to imagine that all the detonation packs you go through by blasting through rock formations is only further alerting the Geonosians to your presence. You'll know you finally reach the AA gun whenever you're greeted by battle droids. And as you approach, the cannon gives you one last reminder of why it's so dangerous. The assault on this facility is one of the best reminders as to why you need a squad. No single clone, no matter how excellent his training, could tackle the challenge that lies before you. Numerous battle droids and super battle droids lay down fire as you navigate through one last labyrinth of rocky outcroppings. These rocks both provide cover but also obstruct your shots, with only a few places you can effectively shoot from. But also that means the enemy knows exactly where to aim. You have to balance ordering your squad to different strategic points to set up grenade and sniping positions. However, if you leave them at these spots, you are left to push up alone, which can lead to being easily overwhelmed if you're not careful. All of this quick thinking, and you've only just made it to the door, most likely with injuries that need to be addressed. And you won't fare much better inside the bunker. You first try to sabotage the loading mechanism, but one charge isn't enough, so you need to make your way up to the second level. After some debris conveniently blows open a door, you must begin fighting through various control rooms. The only problem? The windows are open, and bugs are flying in. Even the act of going to the second level is a challenge, since you have to constantly stop to prevent from being overrun. And for every blast window that needs to be closed, that's one less commando to help you hold off the horde of droids and Geonosians. At least any Geonosians still stuck to the windowsill come to a satisfying end. With one last detonator, the anti-air gun is out of commission. But before breathing a sigh of relief, you are reminded once again that that wasn't even your primary objective. So, you fight your way back down through more droids, some of whom might need a reminder before dying for good. At this point, however, even without the AA cannon, the gunship lift to the next objective would be pointless due to its close proximity. So, you huff it on foot to reach your final goal. The path you take leaving the AA bunker is very similar to the path leading up to it. There is one final canyon, and this one too is littered with the remains of crashed starships, which means one last go with that laser cannon. From the outset, your target looms overhead, so you know you're heading in the right direction. But you have to stop and wonder, how exactly are the four of you going to bring that thing down? With the anti-air gun taken care of, you're gifted with a supply drop containing the previously mentioned anti-armor attachment for your gun. This grenade launcher is a deadly new addition, but it works especially well against super battle droids, and you'll have plenty of time to test it on those soon. You have a few more waves of droids to blast through before you can board the core ship. Of course, at this point they're hardly a challenge. However, look behind them through the corridor and you might spot your next real challenge. The dwarf spider droid is the single toughest enemy you will encounter in this game, which it's a giant walking tank, so that shouldn't be super surprising. What really caught me off guard, however, was just how quickly it shred through my squad mates whenever I wasn't careful. While 4-0 had a sniping position that offered some cover, I had never ordered Scorch and Sev to any position, so they were fighting out in the open, and they very quickly paid for it, leading to me trying to revive them while also taking massive damage myself. We still defeated the spider droid, but to me it was a reminder of my role in this squad. Without leadership, we're just 4 clones working through the same area, not as a team, not of one mind like we're meant to be. But that's enough philosophizing, as our gunship comes back and blows a hole through the door. One final note on environmental storytelling, however. Not only now could our own gunship drop off supplies and lend an assist, but if you pay attention, you will see both Republic and Separatist ships battling above this canyon. Like I said, with no anti-air cannon, our forces have a stronger presence. But now it's time to tackle the core ship. As you enter the docking bay, you may see another spider droid making its way on board, hinting at a future encounter. Once inside, our team splits up to complete smaller acts of sabotage before stealing the launch codes. This means we're back to being on our own, and the absence of your squad is certainly felt. Our specific mission is to disable the droid loader and storage racks. This means we have to pass through a warehouse full of super battle droids. This is another area that really roadblocked me as a child, mainly because I played through it completely wrong. You have to navigate through these racks where droids are on standby. As a kid, and I mean as a very young kid, I thought you had to fight your way through. This is a problem because if they take any damage, or even if you brush up against one, these super battle droids will activate. So wildly firing and throwing grenades didn't get me very far. This event gave me a fear both of this area, but more so of the super battle droids. Even still, I'd argue they're among the toughest enemies you come across in this game. Now, just one isn't much of a problem, especially with the aforementioned grenade launcher attachment. But if you find yourself in a small group of them, you will take substantial damage if you aren't careful. So, while you're here, be careful not to wake any more than the 2 or 3 which are scripted to appear. Stick to your sniper rifle since it leaves little room for a misfire which might alert the others. There are also some auto turrets which are weak to said sniper rounds. As you leave the warehouse, you can hear your squad mates check in as they complete their individual objectives. A quick side note, but I love these moments as you leave the warehouse where you can see the wide open storage areas of the core ship. It provides a nice sense of scale, as well as once again emphasizing how your 4-man team is capable of crippling it. You make your way to a hallway with the computer console you're looking for. If you're careful, you can even sneak past these droids, but there's really no need. I also like just shooting the other computer consoles. Just because. They have a nice explosion animation and, I don't know, it's just fun to me for some reason. As you finish inputting the code, the fruits of your labor are immediately ripened, as you see several droid racks explode, ragdolling supers as you walk by. You then take an elevator to, in my opinion, one of the best instances of catharsis. You're in yet another Super Battle Droid warehouse, but now it's disheveled. Storage racks lay broken, robots are short-circuiting as they try to attack. It is always a very satisfying scene for me, who struggled so much with the previous room when I was younger. There's also this funny little animation where as you clear this pile of debris, there's an active droid waiting for you on the other side. But the explosion dislodged another rack which swings down, killing the droid in a Tom and Jerry style animation. It's just great. Eventually, you link back up with your squad, and, as usual, Sev has to have an over-the-top epic entrance. You also face droidicas for the first time, but they aren't very challenging. EMP grenades are already super effective against any robot enemy, but here they disable the droid's shields as well as stun them, making it an easy kill. We also come across a new obstacle, the droid dispenser. These will infinitely respawn battle droids until you set a charge and destroy it. This one is fairly easy, but later in the game we will see these dispense other types of droids, like destroyers and supers. We make our way towards a service elevator that will lead us to the bridge, but before we make it, we have to face a few more Geonosian elites, which they don't do much more than soften us up before our next big challenge, a rematch against the spider droid, likely the same one we saw enter the ship earlier. However, this was a much easier fight the second time around. Using the lesson I learned last time, I made sure to assign every member of the squad to some sort of position, be it sniper, grenadier, or anti-armor. The result was a very quick victory where they took no damage. It just hammers home again the fact that your squad is a tool, a weapon to be used, one which can make fights far easier when properly utilized and led. As we approach the bridge level, we hear the ship will reach critical failure and self-destruct within 5 minutes. Seems like we did our job well, but we still need to hit the bridge and download the master launch codes. And now, we have a time limit. As you make your way towards the bridge, the whole ship begins falling apart much the same way as it did in the Super Battle Droid warehouse, but now on a much larger scale. You also need to stay wary of your supplies here, mainly your sniper and anti-armor ammo. You still have a good few waves of enemies between you and your goal, and while there is a supply cache here and there, it's best to stay stocked up so you are properly equipped once you reach your target. With one final door breach, the bridge is your new battleground. Inside are several battle droids and auto turrets. Not too bad, but then you must hack into the launch codes, which is the longest computer console that you've come across at this point. It only takes a minute, but the ship's PA system reminds you that there's only 2 minutes remaining until critical shutdown. Similar to the earlier jammer cave, you have a couple different options when dealing with this room. Either you or a squad mate must slice into the terminal. You also have 2 sniping positions aimed at the 2 doors from which several super battle droids and droidicas will begin to appear. You also have one new mode of defense. Some explosive canisters by the door which can be rigged with a proximity bomb to make a mine. As we've learned, the key is to order your squad to whatever role you think is best. It can be very easy to get overwhelmed if you aren't careful, but with enough determination and good on-the-fly decision-making, you can easily conquer this last task with plenty of time to escape.
Advance to the aft docking ring. Be advised we're going to blast it open. Stand back!
It's good to see you, 4-2.
All aboard! It'll be good to get back home to the Prosecutor.
I can do this all day.
Sev, don't you ever get tired of this?
Overall, Geonosis serves as an excellent introduction to the game, which is really no surprise since this is the first of the 3 campaigns. It introduces us to the world, the type of game we're getting into. It's still Star Wars, but it focuses more on the tactile and brutal aspects of war, which at the time of release was only just beginning to be explored in Star Wars media. It introduces you to your squad, their personalities, their quirks. Some of my favorite moments playing this came from just hearing their dialogue, which, due to the structure of this video, I can't really show that off to the fullest, but it's best experienced firsthand anyways. And lastly, it shows you what all you can accomplish with your squad. Over these few missions alone, we performed assassinations, halted enemy production, and prevented the escape of an entire army. Not to mention the other smaller objectives we completed along the way. It lets your imagination run wild just enough to think about what else you'll come across over the course of this game. What is next for Delta Squad? Hunting down more high-value targets? Sabotage and espionage? Single-handedly turning the tide in a major battle? Actually, the next mission is probably not what you would expect it to be. And it all has to do with Scorch's final line about returning to your home. One R.A.S. Prosecutor.
You may recognize your next objective, the Prosecutor, an Acclimator-class Republic assault ship under the command of Captain Martz.
We pick back up with the Commandos about a year later, preparing to insert for another mission. This time, deep in space. The target is the Republic assault ship, the Prosecutor, the same ship Scorch referred to at the end of the Geonosis campaign. We are told the ship was on patrol near Corellia before going missing and emerging 2 weeks later near the Chaikin cluster. And while I can comprehend the idea that the ship went missing in one place and reappeared in another, these made-up words provide absolutely no sense of distance. For some reason, I got very curious about this, and so using an old map from the Legends era of Star Wars, My research showed me that the ship disappeared right around here and reappeared here. Not a relatively far distance, but this is within the context of an entire galaxy, and it is significantly deeper in space. The biggest question, though, is still why? What made the Prosecutor go missing in the first place? Obviously, the Republic suspects a trap. So, due to it being their former home, and the recommendation of an unknown higher-up, Delta Squad is sent in to investigate the ship and search the data logs to look for answers. With one final friendly flourish between Sev and Scorch, we're back to being a divided team. Each squad member is assigned a different data core at different points around the cruiser. We enter through a torpedo firing bay and make our way through the bowels of the ship. Once we enter, we lose comm connections with our CO. We can still hear our squad, however, which means that we can hear 6-2 report on some strange static interference with his visor before it disappears. There are no immediate life signs beyond a couple of Minox, but if you fully look around the area, you might spot the corpse of a clone trooper. A few moments later, and Scorch reports on the static once again, before being attacked by something.
6-2 again. I'm getting that static again. Stronger this time. I can hardly see. What the?
6-2. Delta 6-2, can you hear me? Report.
Get off me, you throwing bag of bolts!
6-2.
With your squad so spread out, no one is able to check on Scorch or even monitor his vitals, meaning his fate is currently unknown. As we continue on, we pass through several pitch-black areas which force you to use your night vision. Eventually, we reach a still-living clone trooper who seems to have tried hiding himself down here. I find the game's portrayal of normal clones a bit strange. It's never very favorable, with this one being portrayed as a coward and another later on being overly snarky. It's just odd. But before we can process this, the clone is attacked, and suddenly, what happened to 6-2 becomes a lot clearer. Let's go ahead and address this now. The R.A.S. Prosecutor section of this game takes the shooter genre of Republic Commando and takes a hard turn into space horror. The mystery of what happened here, the decaying bodies, being isolated from your squad who are getting picked off. It's mainly the first few levels that really lean into the horror, and obviously it's not quite as scary as something like Aliens or an actual horror game. But I do think the game succeeds in creating a certain unease while you explore the ship. There are several reasons as to why I think that, but for now I think the main reason is just the isolation. You are alone, separated from your squad. And after being with your squad for so long, you really feel their absence. But not only are you separated from your squad is separated from you. And you probably feel a tinge of guilt that you can't go check on Scorch yet. We get one more scene of these mystery attackers offing another clone before we ourselves are ambushed. This is a scavenger drone. It shoots a beam of electricity at you to drain your shields and health. And if it gets too close, it will latch onto your head and try to drill through your helmet and then your skull. Thankfully, a single pistol shot can bring them down. However, they will then try to dive bomb you as they crash. And whenever they're latched onto your head, a few strikes from your wrist knife is enough to stop them. You just have to work fast enough. Obviously, there is some facehugger influence common in space horror that's present here. They aren't difficult to kill, but often these drones can hide and get the drop on you. So learn to keep an eye out for static so that you can neutralize them first. As you keep moving through the vents, you'll catch a glimpse of some clones fighting off something before hearing a strange screech and being cut down, proving that there must be something worse than droids on the ship. This is further solidified whenever you encounter blood, a rare sight with the plasma and cauterizing weapons of Star Wars. But, at least we're now near 07. Sev's data terminal is just below you, and while he accesses it, he too is attacked by a scavenger. While the droid gets shot down quickly enough, you'll notice some other creature crawling along the walls before leaping down and incapacitating Sev. And as you try to figure out how to save him, a ventilation shaft burst opens and you are rushed down by the same opponents. Meet the Trandoshans, the lizard race of Star Wars most famous for the bounty hunter Bossk. These specific Trandoshans are berserkers who will charge you down with blades, explaining the earlier carnage. They can tank quite a bit of gunfire and often get right up on you if they're not brought down quickly enough. A melee strike will typically kill them in one hit, but then you risk taking damage yourself. They like to jump out of debris and catch you off guard when attacking, and it can be a bit startling if you aren't prepared for it. But once you learn to recognize these barrels, you can, once again, kill them before they even realize what's going on. We will also bear witness to another Trandoshan type as they execute a clone. These are the Slavers, another close-quarter opponent perfectly suited to the hallways of this ship. After being killed, you can pick up their weapon, the ACP array gun, which works as a shotgun. It's one of my favorites and the first of several new weapons you will gain access to during these missions. The game seems to like throwing new things your way on the Prosecutor, as next you're faced with landmines. In order to deactivate them, you must stay crouched on your approach. There are also auto turrets, which, while you've already come across them on Geonosis, these start out friendly to you, but they can be hijacked by Trandoshans if they reach certain terminals. Something else you need to be aware of. You'll reach the room where Sev was dispatched only to find no Sev. He has seemingly been moved, leaving you to scan his data logs as well as fight off more slavers. The perfect time to test out your new gun. And while buckshot is great, sometimes range is just better. Also, while we're alone, let's talk about our player character. Boss is the 4th commando of your squad, and your vessel throughout this game. While he doesn't talk much, he is far from being a silent protagonist. And he even has his own personality, much of which is on display as you wander these halls alone.
You lizards need to learn that I'm a lot scarier than you are. An energy weapon that looks like a slug thrower. I didn't think lizards were that nostalgic. Blast.
What's that, sir? I didn't copy.
Just some interference on the comlink.
Oh, one of the deluxe models. Come to save us with your superior training.
This deluxe model is the only thing standing between you and a bloody death. So you'd best be showing some respect, Trooper.
Yes, sir. What are your orders, sir?
Hold the line. Kill any lizards you see. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this.
Will do, sir.
An elegant weapon for a more civilized time, huh? Well, guess what? Times have changed.
I think we can all agree that Temuera Morrison never has a bad performance whenever it comes to Star Wars. His delivery when it comes to any clone trooper he plays is just excellent. With Delta 3-8, there's still that hint of Jango Fett in his voice, but with a certain humor that can come through at times too. I've got to applaud Morrison here because voice acting is a slightly different skill set than on-screen acting. And both here and in Battlefront 2, he gives a solid performance, but for two very different reasons. It would have been easy to let Boss be a total self-insert for the player, a blank slate who says nothing for them to latch onto. But I appreciate the extra work to make Boss just as fleshed out as the other Delta members, while also being easy for the player to connect with. As you continue through the ship, you see more and more destruction wrought by the Trandoshans. But why did they attack this high-value military target? And for that matter, how were they able to overpower the soldiers on board this ship? The slavers and berserkers are certainly tough, but they don't really seem like an organized fighting force. Still, they are formidable, and you must face more as you extract the history of the 2nd Data Corps. Here, you have a chance to activate some auto turrets to defend your flank, since now the lizards will come at you from both sides of the room. It's not enough defense to keep you from entirely watching your own back, but it certainly gives you a bit more breathing room while you fight off the Horde. With your initial mission complete, now it's time to get your squad back. The first order of business is reaching Fixer, the only member of your squad not incapacitated. As you make your way through the ship's landing gear, you are subject to more auto turrets and more Trandoshan ambushes. Two more combat attributes about the slavers are that they will sometimes throw grenades at you, the first enemy to do so, and they are also capable of switching and becoming a berserker, but they are much easier to kill, not being able to take as much damage. In fact, the Trandoshans are really only dangerous when in large numbers or are close enough for their shotguns to shred through your armor. The real danger is the auto turrets, whose continuous fire eats through your shields far faster than I remember. As you approach the exit, you will see a new, bigger Trandoshan, with Sev slung over his shoulder, unconscious. Some scavengers and turrets stop you from pursuing and allow him to escape. The deeper into the ship you go, the more destruction you see. More broken system, more fires, more clone corpses. And there's this rusty brown tinge over everything that screams disrepair. You also come across more ambushes. The Trandoshans seem to be one-trick ponies, but their attacks are getting more elaborate. Dropping grenades from the air ducts before descending, emerging from false walls in an attempt to surround you. They've also started laying landmines, which, if you aren't careful of, like me, they'll leave you reloading a save. Whereas before death was just a minor hurdle, now you have no squad mates to revive you if you fall. You'll reach another pile of rubble you need to blow through. However, there is a ventilation shaft which actually takes you to the other side, no destruction needed. This is the same vent where that lightsaber Easter egg is located, but I just think it's cool that there's an alternate approach path here. Sadly, it's the only one I can think of, and I wish there were more like it in this game. Once on the other side, however, we come across another grisly scene in progress.
What in death's name is that?
Look out! We need reinforcements! Look, Commando, we sure could use your help, sir. Ah, you cold-blooded...
This is the same Trandoshan we saw carrying Sev before, or at least the same type. The Trandoshan Mercenary Elite. Much like the Geonosis Elite, these are tough and will melt your health if you aren't fast enough. But if you stay back and use your sniper rifle, each headshot will stun him long enough to shoot again. If you don't have any sniper ammo left, however, use a flashbang and hope for the best. I haven't talked too much about grenades because it's a fairly simple, self-explaining process, but there are 4 grenade types in this game. Thermal detonators are normal, EMP grenades stun droids. Sonic grenades have a proximity detection, so they work both as an impact grenade or as 10-second mines. And then there's the flashbangs, which only now against Trandoshans are really useful, being able to stun them. Back to our elite, he has just dropped an ACP heavy repeater, this game's minigun. And unsurprisingly, it's just as effective against Trandos as it is against you. Not much further and you reach your rendezvous point. But before reaching 4-0, you hear something behind you, only to then be faced with a droid dispenser wheeled in by the slavers. With Fixer stuck on the other side of the door, you are left to set a charge and destroy the dispenser yourself, meaning no one can deal with the emerging droids. However, the tension is quickly lost as you remember how little damage battle droids actually do. Still, this is a neat set piece in theory, and it also raises the question, where did the Trandoshans get separatist equipment like this? However, it does also somewhat help explain what a neutral party like slavers are doing attacking a Republic cruiser. But now, reunited with at least one Delta, you set off to rescue the others. I haven't talked about them much because they haven't stood out to me yet, but each time you load into a new section of a level, a word appears as a sort of subtitle for that section. They're usually nothing terribly special, so I tune them out. But while reviewing the footage, I noticed the subtitle for this section is called Troika, a word I have never heard before. So, I looked it up and found out that Troika can mean a couple of different things, but it's a Russian word referring to a type of vehicle pulled by 3 horses. It could also refer to a governing body of 3 people. Think of like a triumvirate. Honestly, I could spend way too much time thinking about what it means within the context of this game, so I'll just give 2 quick possibilities. Either it's just a reference to rescuing the 3rd member of your squad, Sev, and going back to being a 3-man team again, or it's a sort of meta comment on our entire squad. Fixer, Sev, and Scorch are your 3 warhorses pulling the machine, but you are the driver leading them. And now, it's time to reassemble your Troika. As I said a moment ago, Sev is the first commando we rescue. He is currently being interrogated, so you must travel down to the level below and eliminate his captors. If you're like me and were saving your minigun for a special occasion, now would be the time to do so. Once you've revived 07, he tells you that the Trandoshans were wanting the information he recovered from the data logs. He also reveals that 6-2 is still alive and being held in the detention block. A quick encounter with another Trando elite, and you're on your way. 3/4 of the way back to full strength. The prison block is an interesting place. I like how its design is reminiscent of the Death Star holding cells. It creates a nice connection between the Republic and the future Empire. It's also laid out in a very labyrinthian manner. Maybe that's to disorient any escaping prisoners, but you too can get turned around if you aren't careful. Pathways in the cell halls can lead to these overlook areas. A nice place for either you or your enemies to set up position. Even when walking down the hallways, slavers can emerge from these paths to catch you off guard. And there will be quite a few Trandoshans waiting for you down here. Between the overwhelming amount of enemies, turrets, and droids, and the overall tight space leaving little room to maneuver, the prison block is a challenging section to get through. I also think it goes on for a bit too long, but that may have been more me getting turned around than anything. There's one last security door before you can locate Scorch. If you use the overlook, you can actually destroy the auto turrets before breaching the door. After slicing into a console to find his cell, you can revive 6-2, who is just as entertaining as always.
Did I miss anything important?
No. Did you get the data?
Yeah, they searched me, but I hid the data pretty well.
Where exactly?
You don't want to know.
Roger that. Doubters, move out.
With your full squad in tow, it's time to leave the detention block and figure out what's going on. You begin making your way towards the Prosecutor's bridge. The hallways leading there are another long gauntlet of Trandos, turrets, and traps. Along the way, you will need to breach doors, with expecting enemies waiting on the other side. It's repetitive, and this section feels more like an endurance match than anything. It didn't help that I had run out of ammo and had to rely on my pistol most of the way. At one point, however, I noticed that Boss made a comment about going in quietly once we reached a door that needed breaching, and the auto turret alert came online. I also realized I had heard him say this a few other times in similar situations. There is an alternative to door breaches where you can hack the console beside it instead of blowing through the door. It takes longer, but I decided to give it a try, and sure enough, whenever I walked through the door, the turrets didn't fire back. I didn't get a chance to test this again, but it certainly saved me a headache here. After a few more hallways and droid dispensers, we reach the bridge. Inside are several super battle droids, and a whole mess of slavers and berserkers. Just rushing in didn't have the desired effect, so let's just say I found myself replaying this section a bit. The second time around, I was much more strategic, using my grenades and anti-armor rounds as well as ordering my squads to positions. We quickly cleared out the room. What I didn't account for was that after defeating everything inside, more enemies would come from outside. turning around only to be faced with 4 more super battle droids while I had no anti-armor left is quite a horrifying experience. It also didn't help that I had unassigned all my squad mates and now none of them were close to any sniping or grenade positions. Still, we somehow beat them back. At the front of the bridge was a large jamming device, which explains why we lost comms with our CO. After setting the charge, we finally have contact with the outside world. And now it's time to go on the offensive. Our commanding officer alerts us to the presence of a Trandoshan slave ship located in one of our hangars. This explains how they got in, but it's still unclear what they're doing here, or why the Separatists seemingly sold them battle droids. Our CO says he'll begin analyzing the data we've collected while we deal with the remaining pirates. However, on our way out, we are greeted to the wrong side of a door breach. The culprits are more Trandoshans, but these are far bigger, far better equipped, and use far more dangerous tactics. Our commander tells us that these are mercenaries, with military training and hardware. They become one of the most frequent enemies from this point onward. I like whenever games give you an enemy of comparable skill to your own, whether that be some sort of rival like Virgil or Jetstream Sam, or in the case of shooters, a similarly trained group, like the Elites or the Honor Guards of Halo. These Trandoshans use largely the same toolkit you use, armed with submachine guns, ducking and shooting from cover, taking up positions and throwing grenades. They make for a much different challenge than the other enemies we've faced. Instead of relying on numbers, they too work as a unified team. Also, another fun little detail, if you shoot the gas packs on their back, it sends them flying. We now have to retrace a lot of our steps, first going back through the hallways we took up to the bridge in order to make it back to the detention block. Normally, I am not a fan of repetitive level design, but it makes sense in context, and you'll probably be more concerned with coming to grips fighting your new enemy. One tactic I especially noted is how they approach from all sides by blowing holes through the ceiling and rappelling down. It's a smart idea to position your squad in such a way where all angles are covered. You'll also come across a super battle droid dispenser, same as the others, but now spewing a much more dangerous opponent, and taking a longer time to set a charge. Not only will you be dealing with all this, but you'll also likely still be weakened since your health carries over from the previous level. While taking the elevator down, you are ambushed before reaching the detention level, and are greeted with more mercenaries waiting. There really is something to be said about facing an enemy using the same tactics as you. The detention block is as maze-like as ever, and now the Trandoshans have set up even more barricades, as well as some rocket turrets. I found myself with no sniper ammo left, so it was a slow approach to the turret. However, just like the Geonosis sonic cannon, you can take control of this gun and use it against its owners. Your CO tells you that the prison has a lockdown feature which we can use, but we will need to repair 3 circuits in order for it to be activated. Finding the circuits is a good use of the winding corridors here. While searching, Fixer will report that he's picked up a transmission from clone troopers nearby. There's nothing we can do about it now, so our commander tells us to stay focused on the task at hand. I want to quickly acknowledge the commanding officer. He's a very crucial character, being your man in the chair and advising you on your missions. He's almost like a 5th member of your squad, which is odd considering just how forgettable he is. You never see him talked about or mentioned whenever Delta Squad is being discussed. As we repair the final console, the brig's safety measures kick in as a poison gas begins to fill the rooms, killing any Trandoshans left. Your helmet seal keeps you and your team safe, so now we can investigate that clone signature on the way to the bridge. One Death Star trash chute reference later, and we're off. Only to be met with a horrifying scene.
Where are we? Changing visor mode.
What the? You've got to be kidding.
All right. This is getting serious.
Get out of this.
It seems that the Trandoshans have been disposing of the clones stationed on this ship by dumping their bodies into the garbage chute. It's sickening, and only made worse as you see scavenger drones puppeting and dragging corpses to this location as you leave. There's another dimension to this scene which makes it subconsciously even darker. Unless I am mistaken, this is the last time you see or interact with any regular clone troopers to any capacity. No more running into them during levels, no more verbal exchanges. The only exception is our commander, who is portrayed as a Phase 1 clone trooper, but I don't think he really counts in the same way. This is the fate of clone troopers in this world. To be killed and disposed of. But, in a twisted sort of silver lining, perhaps it serves as the motivation you need to really make the guilty party pay. There are a few more hallways for you to fight through, these ones lined with auto turrets. If you find their control panel, you can turn them on and they fight with you, even ruining a few Trandoshan ambushes. Again, if the mercenaries get there first, they turn the turrets on you. Eventually, you reach the hangar and are greeted by a ship that seems way too small to have brought all the Trandoshans we've seen. I don't know, video game logic, I guess. Is this really going to be the thing that breaks your immersion? You are told every mercenary left on the ship is now converging on this location. So this is your final fight with these mercenaries. We also have to face a Trandoshan armed with a new weapon, the concussion rifle. It's a powerful weapon whose bullets implode on impact, but it's limited by its 10-round magazine. It also has the unique property of being fitted with an electro bayonet, which is super effective against droids and even stuns Trandos and other live enemies. Frankly, you're better off using the gun as a spear in most situations. You may also note that I didn't talk too much about the Trandoshan SMG, and that's because I largely think it's a useless weapon. Its bullets are weak, and it fills the same combat role that your basic rifle does, which is more powerful and available to you by default. Typically, I stuck with a shotgun because of its more useful utility. Back to the dropship. Its armor is too strong for a det charge, so you need to hijack the 2 missile turrets located in the room. There is a certain poetic justice to defeating these Trandoshans with their own artillery after they took over our cruiser. I also heard Fixer make a comment about the dropship taking off, which makes me wonder if this was originally some sort of timed objective where you had to shoot it down before it leaves. Nothing in-game reflects this if that was the case. But no matter. With the combined power of both rocket launchers, the dropship is destroyed, and the Trandoshan threat is no more. So why do we still have one more level left aboard the Prosecutor? Backing up a little bit, while making our way towards the detention block, our advisor got back to us with some of the information on the data we gathered. Not only is the Republic data and ship logs still there, but now so is a great deal of information about the Trandoshans. Their tactics, their supplies, routines, all the information you would ever want while fighting them. Not only can the Republic use this information, but so could the Wookiees, the enemies and targets of the slaver attacks. Info like this could be used to strengthen ourselves and our allies. No wonder the interrogators were so keen on getting that data back. Our CO also tells us that a separatist ship has been spotted on the edge of the system, seemingly moving towards us. Returning back to the hangar, our victory is very short-lived, as said separatist Lucrehulk vessel appears. It seems that the Trandoshans and Seps have created some sort of alliance, and now the CIS have come to collect. They have begun shuttling in droid dispensers, but now with no Trandoshan buyers, they become active, and now we have to deal with them. There are 3 hangars we must fight through, each progressing in difficulty. The first one is easy, because no dispensers have landed yet. This gives you a chance to make preparations, assigning squad members to positions, rigging mines, or even setting det charges which can be used as remote explosives. All of this means you aren't terribly worried whenever that first droid dispenser shows up. But for some reason in this section of the game alone, all droid dispenser types take 20 seconds to set a charge. Which, while not affecting the supers and droidica dispensers, that doubles the amount of time for a regular battle droid. It's still not too bad, so you can hold out long enough for your advisor to recognize a weakness. If you destroy the power regulator on the far side of the wall, the force field will short circuit and stop any more dispensers from getting through. And with this hangar secure, we only have 2 left. As you make your way over, you can come across the last living Trandoshan, limping away. Upon making it to the second hangar, one droid dispenser is already deployed, with another well on its way. However, you don't have to wait to sabotage the regulator this time. Since the droids are already here, you're facing a more challenging room. There is a balcony section when you enter that you can use as a sniper nest, but for every commando safely shooting from up above, that's one less to help you deal with the ever-growing dispensers. There are some gadgets around that you can utilize, like this speeder bike, which when activated will careen into a dispenser, saving you time that you would have otherwise spent setting a charge. This hangar is still fairly manageable, but you are reminded of this game's rule about easily getting overrun. It's your third go at this where you realize things go from bad to worse. Upon entering the last hangar, you're faced with unbeatable odds. At least 5 dispensers are already active, droids are everywhere, and the regulator is blocked by debris, meaning no chance of detonating it. Your CO just tells you to retreat to the back of the hangar. And just while trying to make it back there, Sev got downed and I had no chance of reviving him without dying myself. So, I holed up with Fixer and Scorch at sniping and grenade positions and just tried to survive. There is a console back here which our commander tells us could bring in some much needed firepower. The only problem is it's right out in the open and will take 30 seconds to activate. I took the risk myself, but I couldn't even get close to finishing it before I took an obscene amount of damage. Thankfully, there was a Bacta station on the other side of the room, so I found myself in this dance between activating the console, healing, and returning. It was a slow process, but well worth the wait, as the promised artillery was in fact an ATTE. As we mount the cannon, we now have a weapon powerful enough to destroy the dispensers, as well as short out the hangar entrance. It's a great set piece, and just a very satisfying moment. Victory is short-lived, though, as now the Lucre Hulk begins firing on the Prosecutor, and with no living crew, we can't leave or fight back. There's only one plan left. Another Republic cruiser in the area has been alerted and is on its way to help us, so we need to survive until it arrives. There's a gun battery not far from us, and while it won't be enough on its own, activating it might just give us the time we need. The problem is we have to fight our way to it. Now at this point you wouldn't think that's an issue, but the bottleneck we have to fight through is insane. Another long corridor with auto turrets primed to attack us, plus an infinitely respawning pool of droids and super battle droids. When I say you have to fight for every inch of this hallway, I mean it. There was nothing my squad could effectively do, so I had to step up as the leader and take drastic measures. At the back of the hallway was another Bacta dispenser as well as a few supplies. What I had to do was repeatedly charge at the enemy and make myself their target, which let my one sniper get in a few covering shots. But when my health got low, I ran back to refill, very much like the console before. It took time, quite a bit of time, but I brute forced my way through. The PA system was also updating us on the ship's hull integrity. I am very glad that it can't reach 0 and fail the mission because, boy, did the hull's integrity drop fast. It's little more than flavor text, but it added to the sense of urgency greatly. The last objective is to activate the cannons. The problem is there's 3 consoles, each taking 1 minute to activate, and another infinite army on our heels. Once again, you have to choose what's best here. Assign your commandos to those consoles, have them hold the line with sniping and anti-armor positions, work on the consoles yourself, or a mixture of all those ideas. At this point, I was desperate, but I also knew the strengths and weaknesses of my team and the way I had led them. So I set all 3 of them on each of the 3 consoles, while I held the line myself with whatever ordnance I had left. What resulted was perhaps the longest minute of my life. But in the end, our guns came back online, the R.A.S. arrestor showed up to help us, and the destruction of the Separatist vessel meant the deactivation of any remaining droids.
What's going on?
It's the battleship. Their droid control systems are down.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
Thanks for the assistance, Captain.
Glad to be of service, Delta Squad. No one steals a ship from the Republic while we're around.
For being the shortest campaign, the R.A.S. Prosecutor is arguably the most memorable and the most thrilling portion of this game. It's the only real section with an ongoing narrative. On Geonosis, while we did have the backdrop of the first battle of the Clone Wars, it was largely just disconnected missions with very little story threads between them. But here, you get a full 3-act tale. It's also the most terrifying section of the game, and the only Star Wars game that I can think of with any true horror elements. The Prosecutor feels scary for 2 reasons: isolation and desperation. When you start off, you're alone. You're on a ghost ship with several visual hints of some terror before being faced with it yourself. Getting your squad back and retaking the ship offers some reprieve and eliminates most of the blatant horror, but then you are immediately faced with overwhelming odds. Opponents using similar coordinated training to your own, pushing you back. And even whenever you do eliminate them, it's not over, as now you must beat back a nigh unstoppable horde. By this point, the fear isn't from what you see or what you feel, it's from a risk of failure, of dying in some horrible way. It's been a while since I've fully played through Republic Commandos, but I have played through it many times over the years, and I was shocked at just how on edge I still felt returning to the halls of the Prosecutor. By the end, you don't feel a sense of accomplishment so much as you feel a relief that you survived. However, I do have one criticism that I think neuters a lot of the fear which comes with the latter portion of the ship. And that is this game's punishment for death. Rather, the lack thereof, as dying doesn't send you back to the start of a level or even to the start of that section of the level. The game is fairly generous with auto-save points, so when I did die, I found myself having lost little more than maybe a minute or 2 of gameplay. I think a harsher punishment for dying would go a long way here, especially considering how infrequently it happens since your squad has a chance of reviving you. And where's the fear of facing down this unstoppable horde of battle droids if you can just immediately get back up and get right back to fighting? But still, in a more spectacle-driven sense, the game does its job here. I feel like in this game you frequently hear things along the line of, "This is a job only the Commandos of Delta Squad can do." But here, you see just how true that is. An entire starship full of clones couldn't handle what your 4-man squad could. Before moving on, there's one more aspect of Republic Commandos I want to very briefly cover, and that is the books. As I alluded to before, there are a number of novels released from 2004 to 2009, written by Karen Travis, which detail the adventures of certain Commando squads. While Delta Squad is present in many of the books, most of them focus more on Omega Squad, a group consisting of survivors from previously killed squads. Darman, referenced at the beginning of this game, is one of them, along with Niner, Phi, and Atten. There's 5 books in total, but I really can't say much more since I've only ever read 2 of them, and it's been well over 10 years since I did that. I might return to reread them one day. I've always heard they were good and that they fleshed out a lot of the clone Mandalorian lore. It also gives you a better look into Delta Squad's life between these campaigns, as well as their trainer, Wallen Val. Since I'm mainly focusing on the game, I won't say any more, but I felt like I should at least acknowledge their existence. Because I knew someone in the comments was going to if I didn't.
Welcome to Kashyyyk. Thanks to the data you found on that assault ship, the Republic and the Wookiees are on very good terms.
In case you didn't know, the Clone Wars canonically took place over about a 3-year period. I like that each campaign gives you a date so you get a rough idea of its chronology during the war. So, for example, we can tell that we've come to Kashyyyk about at the start of Year 3, with the final days of the war not far ahead. Thanks to the data that we recovered on the Prosecutor, the Republic-Wookiee relations are as strong as ever. I briefly mentioned it before, but Wookiees and Trandoshans have had a long-standing rivalry within the Star Wars universe. Their planets are within the same system, and the Trandoshan religion places an emphasis on hunting, with Wookiees being seen as the ultimate prize. When not hunting, they capture and enslave Wookiees to make a profit. This Wookiee Trandoshan lore has been around in Star Wars since at least 1996, if not longer. So it's nice to see it incorporated into the story here. Delta Squad was called because a major Wookiee chieftain named Tarful has been captured. He's been the one fighting off the Trandoshans for years, but now he is being held in a slave camp. Our mission is simply to sneak in and rescue him. At least starting out, we still have the element of surprise. You can catch a small guard party trying to cook, but they're the ones who get fried instead. Look, I've been working on this video for a while, being overly serious. Let me have one bad pun. Approaching the gate to the compound, there's a few more mercenaries as well as the same missile turrets from the ghost ship, implying that this is the same or at least a similar mercenary group to the one we encountered before. To try and maintain our stealth, I have my squad slice the door instead of breaching it, but it seems our enemy was prepared. Trandoshans begin rushing out of the facility as well as a few paths from the forest. They'll even climb the walls behind you if you're in the turret, so just be wary. We don't fare too much better inside either, as the threshold seems to have been barricaded, and the door we entered from is locked behind us, all while mercenaries line the catwalks above and begin shooting down. Even when we're supposed to have the upper hand, it seems the Trandoshans manage to catch us in an ambush. To escape, we blow a hole through a maintenance hatch and find ourselves on a landing pad. The whole slave camp has a very patchwork design, like it was hastily thrown together. That means the walls are weak enough to blast through, which is how we make it off the landing pad and get away from the reappearing scavenger drones. On board the Prosecutor, we face them in tight, narrow hallways. But here on Kashyyyk, they're just as, if not more dangerous out in the open air, since they can stay farther away and become a harder target to hit. At this point, all pretense of stealth is gone. The narrow lanes between buildings and the catwalks above them make it a dangerous path as Trandoshans have every angle covered. We also see a Wookiee try to escape by hopping the fence. In doing so, he dropped his bowcaster, the next weapon that we can equip. It's a sniper rifle of sorts, having a good zoom in and being effective at long distances. Its gimmick is that it can be charged, with a fully charged blast capable of pinning enemies to the wall. It's a fun weapon to use, but it's very situational. And this isn't the best situation for a slow wind-up weapon. While heading towards the detention facility, an unidentified ship is seen overhead. It's actually the same one we saw back on Geonosis in the very first level of this game. Now, enough time has passed where our advisor immediately recognizes it as being General Grievous's ship. Suddenly our mission changes as we are asked to get a positive ID on the commander of the droid army. Regardless, we still have to head through the holding cells, where we come across many Wookiees, both dead and alive. The live ones we can set free and they will begin to fight with us. And it's then that you gain a respect for these locals. The art style of Republic Commando portrays the Wookiees as these massive hulking creatures almost twice your size. They look and feel like some mythical warrior, and they fight ferociously. This one in particular helped move some debris so that you can continue on. Any Wookiees you free will fight for you until they die, but they can take quite a beating, and will usually take a couple slavers with them. From the prison, we get a clear look at General Grievous, but he also sees us. You can try to shoot at him, but obviously we can't take him out. But why would the leader of a droid army make an appearance at a slaver camp? It seems the alliance between Seps and Trandos is far deeper than we realized. As we try to head towards this landing pad, we see Tarful being escorted and dragged towards General Grievous's ship, before then bursting free. As we join up with him, we all rush the landing pad just in time to see Grievous leave. Only his bodyguards, the IG Series Magna Guards, are left. A pair of them serve as another sort of mini-boss, much like the spider droids from earlier. However, these guys are a bit easier, at least when you only have to deal with them. It's helpful that Tarful will fight with you. However, if he dies, you will revert to your last save point. This is made a bit trickier since both the droids and the Wookiee fight with melee weapons, so be mindful of your shooting. The Magna Guards are quick and like to jump around. An EMP grenade can stun them, but you have to try and predict where they'll land to use it effectively. After dealing with the droids, Tarful informs you that this is just one of several bases in the area. The Trandoshans seem far more dug in than they've ever been before. So we head off to investigate another nearby outpost and figure out what's going on. The next level starts us deep in the jungle, on the outskirts of another Trandoshan base. The hastily dug-in structures and minefields deep within a jungle elicit a feeling close to what you'd see from a Vietnam War action movie. As you try to deactivate the minefield, the slavers counterattack by hurling several grenades ending with a flashbang, at which point several berserkers will attempt to rush you down. However, any mines still active will get triggered by these brutes. There's actually a lot of cases where you use Trandoshan tech against its owners in this level. A little farther in, and you come across a trench line. Clearly these slavers are preparing for war, but it's not Trandoshans you find down here, but rather battle droids. From the dialogue of your squad, I think this is supposed to be a bigger deal than it is. But by this point, even if we don't 100% understand the nature of this alliance, the Prosecutor showed us that the Separatists have made deals with these slavers before. Arriving at the compound perimeter, you're greeted to another round of grenades and berserkers. And again, the grenades do most of the work for you. Your characters note that this camp seems more like a stronghold and appears more heavily defended than the slaver camp from before. As you make your way inside, you see even more droids on patrol. There's a great deal of supplies in this area, including a Wookiee turret which you can use as you hold off a wave of droids. There are no squad positions here outside of the turrets, so your team will likely take a lot of damage. Speaking of, I noticed between these two levels that I found both myself and my squad mates dying a lot more frequently. We never got fully wiped out, but I just felt like we were constantly at low health, and with at least one team member needing a revive every few minutes. There really wasn't much difference in the way I played, at least nothing that I noticed. All I can point to is a noted lack of squad positions, and a lot of new overwhelming tactics from our enemies. I feel like that can't be all, but it's the only things I noticed. Thankfully, back-to stations are fairly common. Also, I want to address a comment I made earlier. Back on Geonosis, I talked about how I thought I heard Sev refuse a back-to order, but I could not back up that claim. I actually found the answer here when Fixer also denied an order for back-to. However, this was only due to his AI not physically being able to reach the dispenser. I think I was standing in the way and blocking it. I noted something similar back on the Prosecutor, where Scorch would not take up a sniping position because of a landmine that was in his path. So it seems your squad can refuse orders, but it only happens if their pathing cannot physically make them complete the task. A nice little touch. There are crates in the area which can be destroyed with a det charge. They're optional, but will have supplies or even back-to stations inside of them. One had a Wookiee homing rocket launcher, another powerful weapon with a very specific use. Boss will note that these are separatist supply crates. A little further on, and we find more.
One's an anomaly, two's a trend. Rule 89, boss.
At this point, it should be perfectly clear what is going on. In Episode 3, we see the Battle of Kashyyyk take place, among the last battles of the war. The game is showing us a precursor to that. The CIS is preparing for invasion, and they have partnered with a Trandoshan military force which they plan to use as a vanguard. The capture of Tarful was most likely a move to cripple Wookiee leadership and get a foothold on the planet before the clone army could show up. Remember, we are the only official Republic presence here right now, so we have to do what we can on this base and on this planet to hold back the droid horde. Ahead of you is another minefield. When deactivating it, droidekas appear and plant themselves right over top the mines, meaning you can reactivate them for a fun little set piece. After this, we see another Trandoshan dropship and a landing pad. This can be destroyed using another det charge near some ordnance. We are then told to proceed to the next level of the facility.
Oh, look. The base has another level.
Clearly, this place is much bigger than we thought. Our new mission is to eliminate the outpost. So we make our way through some sort of loading depot to do just that. There's also this large grassy area which I always assumed was some sort of hunting ground for the Trandoshans, but nothing in-game backs this up. This is also where you hear, in my opinion, the most iconic exchange in this game.
Man, this place gives me the creeps.
A Scorch, nothing better than a jungle hunt. Hiding in the bush, putting a plasma bolt through a hostile's cranium. Makes me feel alive.
Okay, now 07's giving me the creeps.
This is also where I made an absolute fool of myself. In a recent Battlefront video, I jokingly said I'd never pass up a chance to embarrass myself in these videos. And, well, here you go. A super battle droid dispenser spawns at the end of this segment. Behind it was a bombable wall, and hanging above both was a crane holding a supply crate. I had a vague memory of seeing a crate fall and crush something in this level, so I assumed that it was here and that you could crush the dispenser by destroying the wall in the back first. Instead, it was my spirits that were crushed. As Fixer died trying to destroy the wall, I died while trying to finish the job, and Scorch died while reviving me. So, Sev and I were left, and by this point I had run out of any anti-armor, and too many supers were in this valley for me to effectively deal with or brute force my way through. I got caught in another loop of retreating really far back to heal myself, only to return, waste a lot of precious ammo, leave to heal, and return again just to see all my work undone. Once I had run out of ammo and grenades, I got to a point where I had to lure supers back to a rocket turret just to effectively damage them. I was stuck here for 12 minutes. Yeah. Let's just say my fear of super battle droids has been renewed. It was pure idiocy on my part that got me in this position. If I had been wiser, I could have escaped much sooner or avoided the situation outright by just going for the dispenser. I guess there's a lesson here about effective thinking and leadership. Otherwise, you end up with your tail between your legs. While this was happening, I did notice one thing that made me realize it was time to talk about my personal biggest criticism of this game. If you remember back to the start, I noted that each squad member is meant to fill a certain role. Scorch is our demolitions guy, Fixer is the hacker and slicer, and Sev is our sharpshooter. While each of these commandos have strongly defined personalities, nothing in-game reflects these special skills. It's a very insignificant criticism in the grand scheme of things, but it feels like such an easy addition. You'll note that each of these skills corresponds perfectly with the different positions you can order your team to. Obviously, having commandos be locked to a specific task would greatly limit your options for the worst. But what if they were better at certain tasks? For example, I had a friend growing up who told me that since Foro was the tech guy, he could hack consoles quicker than any other squad member, or that Scorch could set charges faster. This is a cool idea, and I think it would help sell the idea of each member's training. But that's not what we got. I tried even paying attention to see if any other examples like this happened, such as certain positions defaulting to a certain squad mate if they weren't preoccupied. Like, what if Sev was always chosen to go to sniper positions first before any other squad mate? The best I got was just coincidence, since the game seems to choose whoever is the closest. However, some people online said that they had seen each member using a specific weapon from time to time. And during the Super Battle Droid fiasco, I did see Sev break out his sniper rifle without being ordered to a sniper position. But if this is my first time seeing this, how frequent could it really be? Again, this is a minor complaint, a nitpick if anything. But when the game does so much right, small things like this stand out more. At least if you've been playing as long as I have and heard these playground rumors. After the droid dispenser, we breach a door and are faced with a spider droid. Not a welcome sight after the past few minutes. However, this is where the crane dropping happens, as you can make debris kill this tank instantly. As we come across the final landing pad, more droid dispensers drop onto it, but they are quickly dealt with by a Republic gunship. With the base destroyed, a major blow has been dealt to the CIS. Since we now know they're here, it's time to reunite with the Wookiees and begin a defense. We arrive in the Wookiee city of Kashyyyk for our next assignment. War has already come here, as a separatist dreadnought is seen flying overhead. Between this and the warriors vigilantly standing guard, you feel the tension as you know this place will soon erupt into full-scale war. The Wookiees are seen preparing for attack by sealing off bulkheads and creating roadblocks, so that they can divert enemies where they choose. Even while preparing, though, a group of Trandoshan mercenaries attack by breaching a barricade. While attacking, you are told to throw thermals into the breach and seal it with debris. The Wookiees seem to be a capable and organized fighting force, even willing to damage their homes if it ultimately means defending it. This willingness to sacrifice is seen especially in our main objective. Instead of being given our mission outright, we aren't told the specifics until we've had a chance to see Wookiee preparation in action. I think this gives us a chance to see what our allies are willing to do, and softens the seemingly extreme act we must commit. The city of Kashyyyk is linked by a massive bridge. The Separatists have already landed on one side and are planning on moving their forces using that bridge. Our goal is to prevent this by destroying the bridge itself. If the central connecting span is eliminated, the bridge will collapse and the droids will be halted. As we set out, we pass through a market concourse which is being attacked by more Trandoshan saboteurs. Several Wookiees already lie dead, but their corpses are so massive that they can double as squad positions. A bit morbid, but the cover is appreciated. Another group breaches a bulkhead, and you seal it off by dropping a tree branch big enough to plug the hole. Also, remember how I said this was a Wookiee homing rocket launcher? Well, if you hold down the trigger, it will lock onto an enemy and fire every rocket at once. For anything other than a spider droid, it's overkill. For a Trandoshan, though, it's just a good time for us. Before moving on, I took a moment to appreciate the design of the area, as it really does look like a shopping center. I talked about the good level design back on Geonosis, but I think Kashyyyk is my favorite area, visually speaking. I've always been a fan of the Wookiee homeworld, and the design of Republic Commando shows us a more sophisticated side to Wookiee culture. There are these market areas, and later on we will see more terminals and technology. It's different from the typically tribal lifestyle Wookiees are shown to live. The atmosphere is also notable. The stormy weather set against dark skies have a very foreboding feeling. With the looming conflict, it reminded me a bit of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings. The air tense with battle, and the inevitable sure to come. We've already gotten a taste of it, but you know a larger conflict is on the horizon. The Trandoshan forces have arrived sooner than expected, creating most of the hurdles you now face. In one area, they've cut the power and set landmines, a particularly dangerous obstacle with low visibility. And on a lesser bridge, barricades and turrets await us. These turrets are especially dangerous. It's the same Wookiee cannons as before, but I learned that they can quickly shred shields. Them and the rocket turrets are shielded in the front, but a sniper shot seems capable of either piercing them or breaking them. If you quickly take out the turret's operator, they aren't much of a problem, so long as no one else takes control of them, but we'll return to that later. We find more mercs entrenched on another street. This time they have fully barricaded it, so we must go through the upper levels. Thankfully, there are several sniping and anti-armor positions here for your squad. I do think these make a difference, as I notice the moment-to-moment battles being far more manageable. But even cover isn't enough for the roadblock waiting for us on Kashyyyk's bridge. The front line of the Separatists have already reached the bridge, so we have several droids and a super battle droid dispenser to deal with. These aren't too bad, with the real trouble coming from another turret. I shot out the operator, a regular super battle droid, and assumed I was in the clear. But remember what I said about turrets being retaken? It seems like there were a great many droids on standby ready to hop back in the cannon after it's been cleared. This meant another war of attrition, as even with the cover of positions, my squad would go down fast. Eventually, I took out the last droid and had Scorch hop on the turret while I set the charge on a dispenser. I then noticed Scorch's health rapidly dropping, just to turn around and see yet another super battle droid spawner. After dealing with these obstacles, it was time to set our main charge. We cleared the bridge, pressed the detonator, only for the explosive not to trigger. It seems this charge was a dud, and the droid army is still approaching. There is one ray of hope, a fuel line running right underneath the bridge. A powerful enough shot could ignite it and give us the explosion we need. A window in a nearby structure gives us the perfect angle. But as we try to access it, another wave of droids helmed by a spider walker appear. With no crane in sight, we simply have to take it in a straight-up fight. Not an awful challenge by this point. Also, remember what I said about the Wookiee rocket launcher being situational? Well, this is the situation, as a well-placed shot ruptures the tank and sends the bridge careening below. With that, a secure line of defense now exists. The only problem is that we're on the wrong side of that line. We aren't the only resistance here, however, as our goal for the time being is just to help any Wookiee warriors still engage with the Separatists. I also need to say again how pointless I find the Trandoshan SMG. I picked it up to give it another go, and, well, look how long it took me to kill a single battle droid. Comparatively, if I use my pistol, I can kill a droid in 2 shots. I'm sorry to the Trando SMG fans, I know all 3 of you are upset, but I genuinely can't find a good use for this weapon. We keep making our way through a few warehouses fighting off mercenaries and droids alike. I also realize in this level what makes the Trandoshan mercenaries such a satisfying enemy to face. I've already said how they fight similarly to you. Obviously they don't have the same skill, but they are significantly smarter opponents than anything else we've come across. And I finally figured out why. When you come across battle droids, they're just there. Every encounter with them is the same because there's no difference between fighting them on Geonosis, the Prosecutor, or Kashyyyk. The Trandoshans, however, engage you in different ways depending on where you are. Each room containing them feels like the encounter was handcrafted to fight them in a specific way. They're just as much a part of the environment, and they use that environment when they fight. Rappelling from ceilings, bursting out of walls, staying high above and throwing grenades down below. I think this level best exemplifies it. Of course, there are times when Trandoshans are just placed in the level like regular enemies, but most of the time their encounters are unique and push you to approach the fight in a different way. Just ahead, a Wookiee opens a hatch to the service tunnel so that we can carry on. Down here you again see the unique design of Kashyyyk in action, with pipes and machinery being built around the branches of the massive trees the locals inhabit. Wookiees in the area tell you that Tarful is up ahead, and our new mission becomes escorting him to his forces so they can continue to fight under his leadership. It's notable that Tarful and his men are here when you remember you're still on the enemy side of the bridge. It seems the Wookiees destroyed it while they still had forces on the other side. Not only that, but their chieftain is here too, leading the charge. And he sure knows how to make a reappearance. As you fight up to Tarful, you'll run across several more Wookiees fighting back. Their animations are fun to watch, and you'll see several of them between Tarful and his troops. There's many other fun details like this throughout the game, be it kill animations from Wookiees or even your squad. There's also little weapon animations I haven't taken the time to point out either. The Wookiee chieftain will follow you around through the rest of the level. His involvement varies as sometimes he'll fight for you, and other times he'll hang back and wait for you to clear out a room. The Separatists have taken control of Wookiee supplies, rigging explosives to ammunition crates. Our new goal is to reclaim these by deactivating the detonator and clearing the depots. Some of these crates will actually explode after a time, and many have more than one deactivation console. Just make sure you're thorough. The first loading dock isn't too bad. The second one, however, gave me trouble. There are many more detonators to hit, and they are spread out, with more super dispensers between them. But the real problem arises at the return of an old foe. 2 Geonosian elites suddenly emerge, and they mean business. It's been so long since you've encountered them, and now they're aided by much tougher enemies, so it's a difficult adjustment going back to fighting them. So difficult, in fact, that it took me several attempts to not have my squad completely wiped out. But eventually we did it, and even managed to save every ammo crate. Too bad there's no extra reward for saving all the ammo. Now with the ammunition saved, we need to get Tarful back to the war room. We have to make it through a pump station in order to do so. However, one last Trandoshan ambush is waiting for us. The windows around the station open, and concussion rifle blasts start flying in. Even if you kill the gunman, another one will come and take their place. The only thing you can do is to get to the window controls and seal them. This is what I meant when I said the Trandoshans feel baked into the maps instead of just being there. Once you reach the rendezvous point, all the Wookiees have been massacred. The culprits reveal themselves to be 2 more Magna Guards, whom you must kill to end the level. Since this depot has more boxes and elevation, it gives the droids an advantage that they didn't have back on the landing pad, which was wide open. Now they have more to jump between, and become harder to hit. Once they're dealt with, the remainder of Tarful's honor guard escort him away. Now he too can provide intel and tactical advice on targets as we approach the end of our campaign. The tree we're currently in serves as a Wookiee citadel. The Separatist dreadnought from before has parked itself at the top to unload droids and siphon power. Our ultimate objective is to destroy it, but first we must fight to the top of the tree. Tarful left a Wookiee guide for us, but he quickly falls as more droids show up. Up ahead, another Wookiee tries to barricade a door, but he dies too. It's a bit hard to take these deaths seriously when the bodies ragdoll in such a manner. On the other side of that door is a spider droid. It must have been assembled inside the room because there's no way it could have got in otherwise. This shows that the CIS have got a good foothold in the area. Most of this mission is just fighting your way up the tree through numerous droids. It's challenging, very challenging, but I don't have too much to say about it beyond a few key sequences in the level. This level suffers a bit from the game just throwing everything at you repeatedly. It's a lot of the same types of encounters with walker tanks and super battle droid dispensers. It's a bit much, but I also think that's the point since the Separatists have all but overrun this place. There is a hangar where Wookiees are pinned down, and we have to clear the droids from inside before they are killed. This section gives you your first real look at a droidica dispenser. These were back on board the Prosecutor, but you probably didn't notice them if you finished the final section quickly. After that, you navigate through a Wosher tree nursery. These are the same trees like the one we are currently inside. They grow to be massive, easily big enough to hold an entire Wookiee city. Here, the Wookiees care for the Wosher seeds and sprouts before transplanting them into the wild. This area is filled with Trandoshans and Trandoshan elites, so don't let the pretty nature visuals distract you. Next, we need to activate some backup power generators. With the CIS tapped into the grid, there's not enough power left for other countermeasures, like the defense turrets. But we aren't the first one to these generators, as they are guarded by infinitely respawning Geonosian elites. I swear, these elites are more powerful than the ones at the start of the game. Maybe it's due to their ever-replenishing numbers, but they can easily take out your whole team, capable of killing a fully healed Commando in seconds. They were so bad at the second generator that I had a pile of dead Commandos right at the room's entrance. It seems that getting your whole squad to the center of the generator is the safest place, since some of the ramparts will block the plasma lasers. With power back online, all that's left to do is make it to the top. Approaching the final hangar and elevator, one Wookiee tries to get your attention. He actually will show you an alternate breach door that lets you circumvent an ambush. Another cool instance of an optional route. Entering the hangar, we see a Wookiee war balloon take off before being shot down by a returning General Grievous. As he takes off, he leaves 3 more bodyguards to fight before disappearing from the game forever. Between the remaining Wookiees and several turrets present in the room, it's not a very hard fight if you're smart. With that, there's one last concourse left before you reach the lift that will take you to the treetop. At this point, I was anxious, because I knew the end of the game was upon us. I used anything and everything I had to get to the top. Our Wookiee companions helped for a bit, but when they refused to duck away from a dispenser explosion, I was back to just having my squad. Eliminate the remaining droids on the elevator, and now it's time to tackle the final level of the game.
Well done, Delta. The Wookiee defense systems are now online and available to destroy the Separatist cruiser. In the upper levels of each of the 4 bays, you'll find a Wookiee dual missile turret. Only with the combined firepower of all 4 turrets do we have the slightest chance of taking down this juggernaut. Get on it then, Deltas.
Why aren't we moving?
Save the button.
Oh, sorry, sir.
With power restored, the 4 Wookiee defense missile turrets are now online. They're strong enough to at least weaken the dreadnought so that a bombing run can wipe it out. The facility is laid out in a circle with 1 turret in each quadrant. As we go, a squad member will arm each turret so all 4 can be used. Many will agree that a good final level should put you to the test. It should give you a chance to utilize all the skills that you've learned up to that point in a fair but challenging way. I think for the most part, Republic Commando succeeds as it throws one final gauntlet at you. The very first room throws you against both of the game's boss enemies at the same time. You have a spider droid in the middle of the room and 2 Magna Guards jumping around. It's theoretically the hardest encounter, but if you find the Wookiee homing rocket launcher, you can deal with the spider droid relatively quickly. Then you're left with the guards as well as a group of super battle droids who enter. Use what you know, position your squad, and it's straightforward. You'll come across several of these battle rooms, and most of them have ammo and supplies, so you can restock once you're finished. You'll need everything you can get, but remember that your mind and your squad is your most valuable weapon. However, that weapon will soon become less potent, as you reach your first turret and need to leave one of your squad mates. On the balcony, you can see the battle overhead, now in full swing. Sev is the first commando to mount the turret, the massive cannons capable of ending this battle quickly. You don't need to assign him, as the game and the advisor will do it for you. With that, you're down to a 3-man team. The next segment of the gauntlet reintroduces Geonosian soldiers. It seems that Kashyyyk was an all-hands-on-deck invasion for the Separatists. You also must battle 2 more bodyguards. I think the Magna Guards are at their most dangerous whenever they have other enemies backing them up. Your attention can easily be divided. With that, you reach Fixer's turret and you're back down to just you and Scorch. You've probably already noticed, but you're losing squad mates in the reverse of how you found them at the start. After that, you and Scorch come across yet another spider droid. Fighting these things with just one other squad member can prove difficult, but still possible. I also kept hearing 4-O's dialogue in this section, and at first I thought it was a glitch. However, when looking up, you realize you're just below his balcony. The next room is pitch black, and your night vision reveals several more Geonosians inside. After this is yet another spider droid. I don't know why the game suddenly became so obsessed with them in the last 2 levels. You reach 6-2's turret, and now you're right back to where you were at the start of the game. Just you against the galaxy. We don't have far to go. Just a quick room where the Geonosians seem to have made their home. Eggs hang from the ceiling and drop drones, all while warriors charge you. I realized that this last level serves as a microcosm of the game as a whole. Obviously, it's set on Kashyyyk and we fight Kashyyyk-specific enemies like the Magna Guards. But as we move on, there's a short section where the lights are out, evoking a similar feeling to the Prosecutor. And of course, this last hallway is Geonosis. I do not think this was intentional, but the elements of this level did remind me of everything we've done up to this point. With all that done, we mount the final turret, and even while separated, our squad works together as one to bring down a mighty foe.
Target locked. Missiles away.
Nothing like a little precision teamwork, Deltas.
And that was nothing like a little precision teamwork.
Lose the chatter, Commandos. What now, sir?
Awaiting further instructions, 40.
Delta Squad, regroup at 3/8 position for exfil.
Boss, I've got a problem here.
Civ, where are you?
On multiple hostiles.
Lost his signal, boss.
We'll find it again, damn it! Squad, regroup. We're going after Civ.
Negative 3/8. New orders came through from the Jedi Generals. Clear the area. Evac now.
I don't care if they came from Master Yoda himself.
As a matter of fact, they did, soldier. Now get your squad out of there.
Blast our orders! 40?
He's right, boss. We gotta evac.
Sir, we have to go back.
Delta Lead, get your men under control. One Commando is not worth risking an entire operation.
One Commando? He's talking about my pod brother.
Hold on, Advisor. What do you mean, an entire operation?
Your team was the advance force for a full-scale Republic invasion. I had strict orders not to tell you. It was your reconnaissance, your intel that verified the operation. And now the invasion has begun.
Ship on Vector 6. Hostiles to starboard, ready gun. Firing solution in 2 seconds. Watch it, Paul. They're on your tail. Twin starfighters incoming at 0-27. Look out!
Boss, look! It's the invasion force.
Taking the city was only the beginning.
I've never seen so many ships before.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'll patch you through right away. Listen up, Deltas.
All Republic forces, establish forward command in Kashyyyk.
Is that really who I think it is?
Rendezvous with Delta Squad, we must. Upon them, we rest Macho. Wookiee freedom must not be sacrificed.
Sorry, Deltas. Looks like it's back to the action. You have your orders.
Delta Squad, lock and load.
I think these last moments speak for themselves. I see no need to comment on them right now. And with that, Republic Commando ends. Delta Squad's stories do continue past this event, as I believe the last few Travis novels occur after Kashyyyk and contain the Deltas to some degree. But as far as this game is concerned, that's it. Now, I'd be remiss not to mention the cancelled sequel. It's fairly well known that a follow-up was planned titled Imperial Commando, which would have taken the setting into the original trilogy. What little concept art exists shows off rebel pilots and lightsaber-wielding opponents. However, due to poorly projected sales of the first game, the sequel was cancelled pretty early on. Everything official that I've found says 2004, which was before this game even released. It's a bit sad since it seems the game sold moderately well in the end. Theoretically, this game would have followed Delta Squad into a new age, possibly with a new member. It could have also followed a brand new squad. Little is known, but it seems the Sev plotline was potentially going to be picked up to some degree, finding out what happened to him next. A lesser-known fact, however, is another sequel idea tentatively titled Rebel Commando. While I'd have preferred Imperial, I think this game could have shown some promise too. But for now, these sequels only live on as the title of the final novel, Imperial Commando 501st. Republic Commando was the only real first-person shooter that I played growing up. I never played the Halo series until I was in college, and it was only last year when I finally tried out the Call of Duty campaigns. I know part of it is familiarity bias, but I felt like something was drastically different between these games and Republic Commando. Obviously, the squad control is a big part of it, but I think there's another reason on the narrative front that separates these titles. Let me give you a hypothetical retelling of Republic Commando to try and make my point. The game starts off relatively similar. You play through the first level, shoot down Sun Fac, and then all of a sudden, you see a ship go by. You can't identify it, but your advisor begins to investigate it since it's likely someone of importance to the Separatist. You continue on with your other missions until you're told that the same vessel was seen landing at a nearby core ship. You make your way there to investigate, but the mystery figure leaves. You're still able to steal some launch codes, however. Fast forward about a year ahead, and more information on this man is known. He's the general of the droid army, Grievous, and now Delta Squad has been tasked with finding him. The R.A.S. Prosecutor was investigating a possible location before going missing. Once it reappears, Delta Squad investigates themselves, finding Trandoshans on board using Separatist equipment. And they recover data logs showing that Grievous made some sort of deal with these mercenaries. On Kashyyyk, the full extent of that deal is revealed, as Trandoshans begin an attack on the Wookiees while bringing in CIS hardware, giving the droids a strong foothold for invasion. General Grievous is discovered to be behind that invasion, leading us to tracking him down. It ends with us confronting the General, more than likely in that hangar where we battled his Magna Guards before. While obviously we don't kill him, Grievous is damaged enough where he has to retreat, maybe even giving an origin to his cough, Mace Windu notwithstanding. Without his leadership, the Separatist army is in disarray, giving us a chance to destroy the Dreadnought and win the battle, but maybe at the cost of one of our commandos, like Sev. How does that sound? An interesting idea for a Star Wars game for sure, but does that sound like Republic Commando? In games like Black Ops or Modern Warfare, your mission is to hunt down some villainous force trying to end the world. In Halo, you're fighting against galaxy-ending threats. But these aren't the kinds of stories Republic Commando is interested in telling. It seems more focused on the small scale. There is no Menendez, there is no Makarov to hunt down, no Halo array to disarm. Instead of an antagonist and the ending, Republic Commando places the spotlight on the protagonists and their journey. Each of the campaigns are pretty much self-contained. The Prosecutor and Kashyyyk have a slight narrative link, but that connection gets severed as the droid invasion overrides the slaver plot. The squad is not only your weapon, but the driving force of the narrative as they survive horrific battlefield after horrific battlefield. When I originally started working on this video, I came to the conclusion that the point of the game was just to display the brutality of war. That was the primary theme I reached. But the more I progressed through the game, I realized there's a bit more to it than just that. However, the world is savage, and that savagery is worth unpacking. You're probably thinking, well, of course the game leans more into the brutality of war. That's plain to see everywhere you look. And that's just my point. You can see it. In a lot of media that deal with horrific events, there's a moment or a scene that tries to really highlight those aspects, putting the horror front and center. Alternatively, some character might talk about horrific events without these events ever really being seen. To pull an example from one of my favorite games and one I've reviewed before, let's look at Battlefront 2. The Rise of the Empire campaign talks a lot about tragic events, The murder of the Jedi, the assassination of some rebellion, the hardships of being a clone soldier in this war. But that game's narrator talks about how brutal or horrifying these events are, rather than letting us see them. Now, of course, you do play through these levels, so you do see these events, but it's not in the levels where these things are highlighted. It's the narration. The way the speaker places emphasis on certain words, the music in the background evoking a particular feeling. The pathos comes from what you are told, not what you see. There's no real difference between the campaign missions and the PG violence presented in instant action or multiplayer. Compare that to Republic Commando, where you see and experience everything. The hardships of war aren't something you're told about, you live them out. And never once is special attention drawn to it. Now, you've heard me go on and on about things in the environment or the story that allude to brutality, but when you play the game, there's not a single line of dialogue pointing that out. From the very first level, you witness the cruelty, the darker side of combat. But these moments either go unacknowledged or are treated as just a fact of life, something you accept and then move on. Such is the attitude of this game. Brutality is a constant. That's just the nature of war. It would be ignorant of me to say Star Wars whitewashes violence and kidifies war, even in media geared towards children like Rebels or the Clone Wars. The dark side of war is still seen, but only in Republic Commando is such a jaded outlook taken. But what I think stands out in this game more is not the brutality the world takes place in, but how you lead your squad through it. This whole game is about your team. The squad is your weapon. But I think we might forget that this squad has a leader. I'm sure someone by now is wondering, why haven't I talked about the first-person HUD being inside your helmet? Truth be told, I thought about mentioning it back when I was discussing Boss, but I thought it was better saved for here. Similar to games like Metroid Prime, the game's heads-up display is diegetic. Your shields, health, your squad's status, and everything else is portrayed as a physical function in your helmet. This is best seen when your visor is covered in viscera and gets wiped clean. This creates a connection between you and the character you play as. You are Commando 3-8, and these are your men whom you must lead. I've mentioned it a couple times in passing, but the difficulty of this game feels linked with the survivability of your squad. And if you don't lead them well, they die much easier. War is brutal, and you have to be the one to lead your team through this brutality. You have to care about your squad, because nothing else does. Just like with the Iwapod, the only way to survive against a mightier foe is to work together as a team and be a single being. But a body needs a head. One Iowa had to suggest the others attack Protoss. It's no coincidence that the part of the game where you feel the most vulnerable is the one where you are separated. You should have lost 2 squad members by the end of this game. The only reason Scorch and Sev are alive is because the Trandoshans back on the Prosecutor wanted to interrogate them. If they hadn't, you'd have been down to a 2-man team. The lesson is baked into the gameplay. The squad is your weapon. Your weapon. They are your responsibility. Even in the eyes of the Republic, you're expendable at the end of the day. I didn't talk about it when it happened, but there is some real betrayal at the end of this game. Your CO tells you he was ordered to keep your real mission on Kashyyyk a secret. It was a ploy to make you the vanguard for their own counter-invasion. And how could he refuse? It was ordered by Master Yoda. More than likely the same superior who recommended your squad investigate the Prosecutor. And while it is a bit of a backstab, you and your squad have been chosen because of how well you perform, how elite you truly are, how well you've led your squad. This is what you were bred for. Is this a betrayal when from the very start you were told your purpose was to sacrifice yourself for the greater good? I've debated for years whether I wish Republic Commando had an alternative ending. Many Star Wars games feature a choice at the end that gives an alternate outcome. While the traditional light side, dark side dynamic wouldn't really work as well with clones, what if there was a choice to go back and try and save Sev? Maybe it ends in failure. Maybe it ends with you losing the rest of your squad. Maybe you could pick another squad member to take that first turret. But you don't have a choice. The game takes away your agency and gives it to Boss. The choice he made was to evacuate the rest of his squad. You've likely made this connection yourself, but Sev is the Iwapod who latched onto the throat of Protoss so his brothers could kill a greater evil. His life for the life of all. And you've spent the last several levels of the game seeing exactly what you're saving. The Wookiees would have fallen without your interference. Their leader was captured, their cities were invaded, their roads are littered with corpses. So Boss is left choosing between the people he's meant to protect or the brothers he's meant to protect. The difference is your squad had a mission, and Sev knew what could be required of him. Was there really ever a choice? Republic Commando forces you to engage with a harsh world. War is brutal, and that brutality is what you live with constantly. But the reason you fight is so that brutality can end. If you didn't fight back, the Wookiees would have become slaves. You are meant to be more than the clone troopers who surround you. You were set apart to be stronger, but also braver, with a sense of honor and pride. A Mandalorian warrior willing to face down the most brutal parts of the galaxy and come out the other side victorious, standing alongside brothers just as committed as you are. Brothers who understand the sacrifice you may have to make for the greater good. Not for yourself, but for others. This is the life of an Iwapod. This is the life of a Republic Commando. I know you hear this all the time with videos like this, but I really do just want to say thank you guys for watching. After how much work gets put into a video like this, just the fact that anyone is willing to sit here for like what, 2.5 hours and listen to me ramble, it does mean a lot. So yeah, thanks. I really do mean it. Like I said before, I did make another retrospective video on Star Wars Battlefront 2 this time last year. If you want to go check that out, please feel free to go watch it if you haven't seen it before and you really liked this video. Fair warning, however, not that I know what I'm doing nowadays, but I really didn't know what I was doing when I was making videos back then. That was my first long-form content video. It's still, like, the content turned out really well, but I will give you a heads up. Every once in a while, the audio is kind of buggy, let's say, and so you might only have sound coming out of the right side of any headphone or earbud you might be listening to. Since then, I've fixed that in all subsequent videos, but you know, that is kind of a major thing in the last video, just to be aware of. But hey, if you played this game growing up, what do you think about what I said? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I don't even 100% agree with the conclusion I came to at the end of this video. I think Republic Commando is so open-ended that you really can interpret it in a ton of different ways. And even the ultimate perspective I talked about with being a leader in this just brutal landscape, there's so many more angles to that I could have discussed. But I felt like the video was probably already long enough as it was, and I didn't want to bloat it. But yeah, what do you think? Is there a different message you think you got out of this game? What about Sev? Do you think he actually did end up sacrificing himself, or was it a pointless sacrifice? Also, do you think Sev lived? Do you think he died? I don't think there's ever been a definitive answer on that, but I honestly could see either one working out. And I would have been interested to see in that follow-up game what they would have done with Sev's story. Speaking of, which sequel would you have liked to see? Would you have rather seen an Imperial Commando, maybe following a new squad, or going back to Delta Squad? Or would you have liked to see that Rebel Commando game? I'm not gonna lie, I feel like Imperial Commando would have had way more interesting enemies to fight, and it definitely would have given a different perspective since so many Star Wars games are from the side of the Rebels. But I don't know, Rebel Commando, there's a part of me that really wants to have seen what that would have been like. Go ahead, leave a comment with any of your thoughts, and if you can't tell, all these questions are just a ploy to try and get you to leave a comment so that this video gets seen by more people. That's not entirely true. I do like reading you guys' comments, because I'm sure y'all have thought about things that I haven't even considered whenever it comes to this game. If you're watching this video the day it came out, may the 4th be with you. I hope you enjoyed your Star Wars day watching this. If you're watching this at a later date, I don't know whether you're working on some other task or maybe even eating a meal. Still, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.